So we are going to transition to agenda item 17.1, which is WHO reform. Dustin from Interest of Justice will speak. He will also speak about agenda item 23, audit and oversight matters, and agenda item 24, collaboration within the United Nations system and with other intergovernmental organizations. After that, we are transitioning to agenda item 25.1, which is progress reports. Again, if anyone registered under pillar 2H, you will fall under this category. I show that the first person that was speaking under this is Denz from AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I don't see Denz on the line, so if someone else is speaking from AIDS Healthcare Foundation, please do email the box so we can make sure that you are able to speak. Followed by Amy Walker from CSL Sequires, and then Danielle Heiberg from Water Aid. I'm going to turn it over to Dustin.
Hello, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, thank you, Jessica, for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for allowing this to happen today and participation. First, Interest of Justice, Free Speech Association, Stop Agenda 2030 Institute, and the Health Rights Association would like to give a friendly thank you for accepting our RSVP on such late notice. So, according to the item 17.1 on WHO reform, it is very obvious that the World Health Organization is needing reforming and dysfunctional. However, it is also very obvious that there are structural defects which are inherent to make up of the WHO, which make nearly impossible to reform the WHO. How can the WHO be reformed when they claim the sovereignty in which you have to go through their own remedy system, which has been non-responsive to us, such as our claim 881786000902 and also our claim 6373278542202, which is non-responsive. The WHO even made rules that will allow for the confidentialities of crimes. It's set up in a way that do not have the reform because they choose to censor the whistleblowers to control information, ignore facts proving the WHO pseudoscience is actually destroying the determinants of health. This is very dangerous for the U.S. to be so heavily reliant on the WHO, failing captured regulatory health oversight. We agree that the WHO does not need to reform, however, as WHO does need to reform. However, as a WHO recognized stakeholder, Interest of Justice in the pandemic preparedness and response, we appreciate if the HHS understands that even as a recognized stakeholder cannot get anything done within the WHO internal oversight system despite having filed multiple charges since December. The people in which were hired at the WHO to serve are injured, vulnerable, and completely defenseless against the imbalance of power of the non-reformable and non-responsive World Health Organization. In the opinion of our organizations, in protected opinion, many scholars, historians, and thousands of recently censored dissenting medical experts, such as our chief scientist, Dr. Michael Yeadon, and the former vice president of Pfizer, the WHO should be prohibited as a private monopoly, which interferes with commerce and lessens the health and scientific standards due to political interference in scientific decision-making and clear conflicts of interests. HHS does not need to waste time in the WHA meetings hashing out how to reform the failing World Health Organization. It's too burdensome and a proposition of a waste of time and money. Far more important, its obligation that HHS has to uphold scientific integrity and accountability. To us stakeholders, that means HHS needs to prohibit any further funding and collaborations until the World Health Organization can provide a shred of evidence to challenge our chief scientists' peer-reviewed evidence, which shows that, in an example, the PCR, the polychain reaction tests, which makes false positives, and therefore the COVID emergency is based on a fraudulent test. So the charges which are still unanswered by the WHO are very serious charges, and our unanswered charges of the WHO of fraud are backed by real science of the rigor HHS accepts, which showed the entire declaration of emergency was in bad faith and in violation of the international law. HHS can't keep the relationship going with the WHO if the HHS wants to be in conformity with the law, science, and their ethical obligations to ensure science and accountability with their collaborators.
Thank you very much. That was our last planned speaker for today. I want to thank you to all of our speakers for sharing their input today, and thank you to the panelists for listening and considering their input for the World Health Assembly. I'm going to turn it over to Lois to give some remarks.
Hi, excuse me. I've only got to speak once. I had 3 speeches to do. One was on 17, which I finished, and then I also had on 25 and item 23, which was skipped.
Oh, sorry, those were all back to back, and so I thought you were actually done with all. We can turn to you to speak to the other 2.
I'd like to speak on item number 23 and then go immediately into 24. My first speech was only 3 minutes, so I timed each one of these for 3 minutes as per required. So
Okay.
Thank you so much for this time to speak. So on the item 23, the audit and oversight matters. Interest of justice, would like to say that according to the United States Department of Health and Human Services policies and principles for assuring scientific integrity, the first paragraph, HHS, uses scientific information to support and inform policy and program decision making. Accordingly, scientific and scholarly information developed by the department or considered in departmental decision making must be of the highest quality and the result of rigorous scientific and scholarly processes. Most importantly, it must be trustworthy. So accordingly, maintaining the integrity of our scientific and technical activities is essential. The WHO's science is just not trustworthy at this point. And we repeat, the WHO is not trustworthy insofar as their technical recommendations for the COVID-19 and on. In reality, the majority of WHO recommendations are completely unscientific, and all of the WHO guidance says that they are not liable for damages from taking their scientific advice, which is a very big issue. So they are unscientific and unaccountable. When they say the WHO is untrustworthy to rely on for science, we are not exaggerating. Failing to respond to our serious charges to the Director General and the Chief Scientists, as well as against the organizations regarding the breach of duty under all of the ethics and research guidance, including the United Nations Procurement Standards of Conduct. These issues affect the invalidity of the relationship with the WHO at this point, where independent oversights and accountability is wholly illusory and false promise. And last time we spoke about the accountability and oversight and how they were not independent whatsoever. The U.S. injures U.S. citizens and the entire international community. So due to the lack of accountability, because there is no functional audit and oversight of the WHO, we believe that it is the best interest for the United States and all member states to immediately withdraw from them and disfund and not adopt any further negotiations towards the IHR amendments, Pandemic Treaty, Agenda 2030, SDGs, or the strategic dialogue otherwise. There hasn't been any substantiation whatsoever with these when confronted with peer-reviewed science. So at this point, the HHS is under an obligation to exit the WHO because they are not functional, as demonstrated by the lack of response to all of these charges. That is my finished statement for item 23 on audit and oversight matters, and I'm moving on to the third item, which we're speaking today on item 24. Collaboration within the United Nations systems and other intergovernmental organizations. So far as we see, the collaboration within the United Nations systems is now scrubbed online because in the other intergovernmental organizations includes the COVID Action Platform, or CAP, which was the brainchild of Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum. After speaking of 200 of his capitalist stakeholder members of the World Economic Forum, they decided for the first time in history that the private sector will assist in pandemic and response. This collaboration within the United Nations system is now scrubbed online because really it was the worst idea in history, and you can't find this information. This collaboration within the United Nations system is a disastrous public-private monopoly that has proven to destroy economies and destroy lives based on intentionally horrible, unscientific WHO measures, which are recommendations without warranty and accountability. The UN collaborations caused HHS to be involved with the monopolized information and committing delicts under the United Nations directions and control. It is, in our opinion, our protected opinion, and our wish that HHS quickly exit the WHO and the United Nations system and cease all UN collaborations, because the UN and the WHO are just not trustworthy at this point for science and are not answering our multiple charges. They just won't answer our substantiations of serious undue psychological and medical experimentations and crimes against humanity. HHS could agree that their collaborators and partners are responsive to charges and disprove all charges or remedy the errors. The United Nations is above the law, and people widely feel the WHO is acting as our unaccountable overlords. Collaborations within the United Nations system is untenable and will be the downfall of our republic. Our organizations cannot stress enough how important it is to exit the WHO and cease all collaborations with the UN system, especially CAP. We will send a longer explanation before written comments deadline, and we thank you again for the time to speak, and we wish that we exit the WHO and stop wasting any money and any time debating unscientific agendas in the WHA until they're substantiated and proven in writing. And thank you so much for the time to speak today, and we hope that everybody has a beautiful day.